looting, and the target is lawful, protected under international law, like this military shipment.
Then it still fits, even if it's technically in territorial waters.
The argument is yes. The PMPF's actions, the armed looting, the diversion, detaining a sovereign defense shipment, they tick all those boxes. So the source concludes it's piracy, but also political aggression, criminal depredation. It's piracy adapted to this specific state-complicit context.
Okay, that clarifies the act itself. What about the individuals, the PMPF members who actually carried out the seizure? What's their legal status under international law?
That's another critical piece. They cannot be classified as lawful combatants.
Why not?
Because they aren't part of a recognized national army. They don't operate under a legitimate legal command structure. They're engaging in armed acts for political and, well, material gain, completely outside international humanitarian law, the laws of war.
So if they're not lawful combatants, what are they?
They are unlawful combatants, and that has serious consequences.
Such as?
They're subject to criminal prosecution for piracy, for armed looting. They can be detained without the protections usually given to prisoners of war. And potentially, they could even be lawfully targeted under international law, perhaps as part of a defensive military response by the legitimate authorities. The usual protections for soldiers just don't apply.
That's a very clear and, frankly, stark position for those individuals. But let's zoom out again. What about the political leadership? You mentioned Denny and Juha. How does accountability track back to them?
Well, the analysis argues they bear direct political and legal responsibility.
Direct. How is that established?
Several reasons given. First, they either authorized this operation or at the very least failed to prevent it, which they could have.
Okay. Negligence or commission?
Second, they provided political cover after the seizure happened, defending or justifying the PMPF's actions.
Right.
And third, they actively obstructed legitimate federal defense partnerships, specifically mentioning the cooperation with Turkey.
So interfering with national security efforts.
Precisely. And legally, this links to something called state responsibility. Under Article 4 of the International Law Commission's articles on this, actions of state organs, even regional ones acting this way, are attributable to the state itself.
So their actions reflect on Somalia as a whole internationally.
Yes. It constitutes a breach of Somalia's international obligations. The argument is Denny and Juha essentially sabotaged national security and damaged Somalia's standing by using this proxy force.
You brought up the UAE earlier, drawing that parallel with Sudan. Can we explore that a bit more? What's the evidence of their involvement here in this idea of a destabilization strategy?
Yes, the source is quite direct about the UAE's support for the PMPF, fitting into a known pattern.
The Sudan pattern.
Exactly. Backing parallel forces like the RSF there to undermine the central government. Exploiting federal systems where central authority might be weaker.
And extending their own influence that way.
That seems to be the goal. In Somalia, the PMPF has effectively become, according to this analysis, a UAE-sponsored proxy militia. Puntland's leadership is seen as facilitating this.
And the implication isn't just influence, is it?
No, it's deeper. It's seen as a strategy that intentionally fragments the state, makes internal conflicts worse, and opens the door for external exploitation. It's described as a clear assault on Somalia's integrity and its independence in foreign policy.
So given this complex web unlawful force, alleged state sponsorship, foreign interference, violations of national and international law, what can the federal government of Somalia actually do? What are their options?
They do have lawful options, according to the analysis, working alongside partners like Turkey and others.
Okay, what kind of options?
First, demand the immediate release of the ship and the cargo. That's basic.
Right.
Second, launch criminal investigations. Prosecute those responsible, both the operatives and potentially the leadership.
Hold individuals accountable.
Yes. Third, they could formally designate the PMPF as an unlawful, hostile armed group. That clarifies their status legally and operationally.
And beyond legal or political moves.
The FGS can respond proportionally. That could mean diplomatically, through legal channels, or, if necessary, even considering military means. They hold the legitimate authority to enforce the law and protect sovereignty.
So what does this all mean? If we bring together all these threads from Mr. Yabaro's analysis, what's the bottom line here?
The bottom line is pretty sharp. The seizure of the Turkish shipment by the PMPF wasn't just an incident. It's characterized as an act of piracy and looting. Full stop.
And legally.
It's a violation of Somalia's constitution. It's a breach of international maritime law, and it's seen as a direct attack on Somalia's sovereignty and its diplomatic ties, especially with Turkey. The conclusion is stark. There's absolutely no legal basis, none whatsoever, for Puntland to hold that vessel or its cargo.
And it points back to the leadership.
Unequivocally. The operation confirms Puntland's sponsorship of piracy, with Denny and Juha identified as the political leads. The warning is that this kind of reckless defiance will have serious legal and political fallout.
It's an incredibly messy and, frankly, deeply concerning situation. Really makes you think, doesn't it? How do situations like this, where you have regional players apparently defying national and international law, how does that challenge our basic ideas about state sovereignty, and what does it mean for maritime security going forward, especially in these volatile areas?
It raises fundamental questions.
Yeah, and what about the ripple effects? When these internal Somali conflicts become proxy battlegrounds for external powers like the UAE, as alleged here, how does that change things? It turns local disputes into these international flashpoints that suddenly demand everyone's attention. Definitely something to keep watching.